Hey everybody, Riot Mort here with the patch rundown for patch 11.2, and it's a special one because it is the mid-set expansion for Fates called the Festival of Beasts. So a bunch of new changes coming up, and we're going to go over them all in this video. A couple things to note, this will not be as detailed as the PBE patch rundown video, so if you want like every new champ's abilities and things like that, you should go check out that video. This will kind of go over the highlights as well as the things that have changed since that happened. And then basically if you're a player going from 11.1 to 11.2, this is the video for you. So, alright, there's a lot to get into, so let's jump right into it. So, first off, we are saying goodbye to 20 champions. Couple 1 costs, couple 4-2 costs, 4-3 costs, 6-4 costs, and 3-5 costs. The biggest change here is a lot of the carries are going away, so it should feel like a very different game than you've been playing before, as you'll be dealing with all sorts of new carries. Some big traits leaving as well. Dusk, probably the most popular one, as well as Moonlight. Couple support traits like Dazzler, things like that. So, yep, say goodbye to these champs. Hopefully you'll remember them fondly. Personally, I'll miss Riven. She's a fun champion. I won't miss Dusk Kane. I'm so sick of Dusk Kane. So, alright. With that, that means we get a bunch of new champions. First off, the Dragonsoul trait. Probably the biggest new trait in TFT. So we've got 7 new champions. Brand, Tristana, Braum, Shyvana, Aurelion Sol, Olaf, and Swain. And the Dragonsoul trait, the way it works is the first few Dragonsoul allies to take damage get a buff. That buff gives them attack speed and spell power. You only get 1 buff at 3, but then you get 3 at 6, and at 9 you get 6 buffs. So a lot of buffs, a lot of power. This build can end up being pretty glass cannon-y, but already we're starting to see some of the high-level players come up with really creative positioning. Probably one of the coolest ones I've seen is Deseek's Aurelion Sol with Gunblade on the front line, so that he gets the buff. But give this trait a try. It's definitely a little bit more of an advanced trait. It's not one that you can just plug and play and expect to work. Don't try to make Tristana your carry. That's kind of hard to do. But give it a try. Hopefully it should be a powerful new trait with some cool, exciting properties. Slayer. If you've been playing PBE at all, Slayer is certainly the star of the PBE. Slayer had to be brought down quite a bit. If you go back and look at the first presentation we did, the hour-long video, the difference in power is pretty funny here. And that's just the trait level, not even to mention some of the champion nerfs that have happened since then. But Slayer is definitely a very strong trait with some very strong carries. Olaf, Tryndamere, and especially Samira in their own rights are very strong. Darius can do well. Pyke is more of a support, and Zed can do really well in some Ninja Slayer stuff. So give this a try if you're looking for lots of physical damage to deal to your enemies, with some surprising amount of survivability with the lifesteal. Executioner. Kindred is back as an Executioner. Xayah is a pretty cool new champion that's doing very well. And Kayle, who kind of struggled on PBE, but is getting some last-minute buffs. So hopefully we'll see how she does. But Executioner basically makes it so they don't need to build Jeweled Gauntlet or IE. They can get built-in crit. This allows for cool builds like, Hand of Justice Xayah, where you just run 2 Hand of Justice. You're getting the extra crit from all the Executioner. So this is a cool new trait as well with some cool carries. Give it a try. Syphoner is another really interesting one that we've seen. On PBE, it actually struggled a bit, mostly because of bugs. But Syphoner is a cool thing. Nasus can drain a lot of health. Vladimir can heal his team up. Morgana also does a surprising amount of damage and heal up with this build. And then Swain, with the right items, can be really hard to kill. Also a good trait to throw in if you just need a little bit of extra healing for your rest of your team, as they do give healing to the team. So be on the lookout for this one. On PBE, we saw some cool builds with 3-star Nasus, as well as 3-star Vladimir. And then just Morgana and Swain builds can also work pretty well with this. So, Fabled. Fabled is a pretty interesting trait in that what it does is it makes each champion's ability do something special. Nautilus becomes even more tanky, Nico does even more damage, and Cho'Gath's AoE stun becomes the entire board. Pretty cool, very powerful trait. It did end up near weaker at the end, but I think it'll still be in a pretty good spot once it goes live. The thing to note here is this is probably one of the more frustrating builds to face, because what you often end up against is something like 4 Vanguard, 4 Mystic, 3 Fabled, and that build has a lot of CC between Sejuani, Aatrox, Cho'Gath, Nautilus, and anything else. Like, a lot of CC in that build, so be prepared. These guys can be pretty scary and pretty frustrating. So there's a couple other new champions here. Rakan is coming in. Pretty cool defensive ability. If you get a chosen Rakan, he's one of the few that still has the mana reduction. Slap a Sunfire on him, and he can do a surprising amount of tanking and damage. And then Sivir is the new Cultist Sharpshooter. Got nerfed quite a bit on PBE, but surprisingly can still do a lot of damage with like a Deathblade, an RFC, a Ginsu, something like that. So don't underestimate her. She gets a lot of AD from her ability, so it can be a pretty good carry in the mid game. And then finally the 5 costs. Samira, if you've played PBE at all, you know Samira has been very strong. I think she was received somewhere in the neighborhood of like 6 or 7 nerfs and is probably still insanely good. Definitely try to run her with at least 2 Sharpshooter and 3 Slayer if you can. Really good items for her: Deathblade, Last Whisper, QS. And she has a very, very big, powerful ult. So watch out for Samira. Definitely something to be scared of. Next up, we have Ornn. Ornn is a 5 cost, is pretty weak actually. His stats and ability aren't that crazy, but his Blacksmith ability, every 4, 3, 1 turns based on his star level, he'll create an artifact. And these artifacts are some of the most powerful items in the game. There are 10 different ones ranging in different abilities. But definitely if you can get an early Ornn, that's a lot of power because you'll have enough time to generate 3, 4, sometimes even more artifacts. But remember, each ally can only have 1 artifact. So if you're planning on putting an artifact on somebody, make sure you save an item spot. So those are the 2 new legendaries you can be on the lookout for. In addition, there's a new system called Lucky Lantern. Lucky Lanterns appear at either 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, or not at all, 25% chance of each. Every player gets their Lucky Lantern at the same time, and they have the same thing inside them. And the later it comes, the more stuff inside. These can have things like gold, item components, Nico's, spatulas, and Force of Natures, as well as new consumables. Loaded Dice is a pretty cool new consumable, as well as the Reforger, the Magnetic Remover, and the Training Dummy. So be on the lookout for these. Lots of cool combinations you can do with them. Pretty fun overall, so tested really well on PBE. So give it a try and be on the lookout for the Lucky Lantern. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so the Loaded Dice, if you haven't played PBE, what it does is it rerolls your shop to only include things that have the same trait. So here we use it on a Fabled Vanguard, and everything in the shop is a Fabled Vanguard. If you're really looking, some of our players have already kind of mapped out what champions give you the best odds. Pretty crazy document to look at. But yeah, so definitely try to do that if you can. Reforger simply reforges the items on a champion, so they pop off and transform. Components turn into a different component. Full items turn into a different full item. And a Ornn artifact will actually transform into a different Ornn artifact. You cannot reforge a Force of Nature. Don't try. If you reforge a spatula, that counts as a component. You can't get a spatula from this. And if you reforge something like Warlord Spat, you'll just get a full item. You cannot get another spatula item, so no like Elderwood Spat coming from that. My recommendation here is use this on just trying to get a full item, or if you just ended up with something you really don't like. So, but I use it for component mostly. So, Magnetic Remover is pretty simple. Use it on a champion. All the items come off them. This is really good if you've already built up a carry and want to transfer items, or say you build like a 3-star Tristana and have items on them, then later hit the Samira. You can transfer all the items from the Tristana to the Samira without having to sell the Tristana. So good stuff there. Finally, the Training Dummy kind of acts like an Azir soldier. You can place it on the board, tank some damage for you, add some more frontline. Allows you to play some comps that don't need as much frontline. So that's pretty cool to see. It's 1-star starting at 2/1. At 4/1 it becomes 2-star, and at 6/1 it becomes 3-star. So cool. All right, now let's talk about some system changes to the game. This one is brand new. I don't think anyone knows about this yet, but there are some ranked changes going on here. First off, to make the race to the first Grandmaster or Challenger more exciting, they're unlocked day 1. So they're still limited to the couple top 100 accounts on each server, but players also have to have 200 LP in Master to reach Grandmaster, and 500 LP in Grandmaster to reach Challenger, meaning there's now this fun race to 500 LP to get you the first Challenger. And what's really cool is like the first Challenger on each server actually gets a little call out that every player will see. So if you want to be server first, go for it. Should be pretty exciting. In addition, we took some time to reevaluate the Challenger and Grandmaster slots based on realm populations. You can see all the numbers here. Some of them change pretty dramatically. For example, Vietnam and an NA almost go up quite a bit. NA almost doubles, more than doubles actually. Other regions didn't change as much. EUW for the most part stayed the same. Actually lost some Grandmaster slots. Brazil didn't change, things like that. So take a look at your realm. Here are the new numbers. They'll also be in the patch notes. Take a look at that. In addition, the chosen odds have changed ever so slightly. Basically what we did is we removed some of the really bad cases because we kind of agreed at this point that they just weren't offering you an interesting choice. You were never being level 6, seeing a 1-cost chosen and going, yep, I'm going to take that. So we removed that and put them up in the next level. So at level 6 now, you can only get 2 and 3. At level 8, you can only get 3 and 4. And at level 9, you can only get 4 and 5. But again, we didn't inflate the best case scenario here. So you're still, if you're looking for a 5-cost chosen at level 9, it's still just as hard as it was before. So this should feel a little better and remove some of those really crappy low rolls. And then in addition, there used to be a start that was 3 belts, 3 cloaks, and 3 armor. We got rid of that and replaced it with a 2 sword, 2 bow, 2 rod, 2 tier 1 glove carousel. Should just be generally more fun. People weren't really enjoying the all defensive carousel. So, all right, on the trait side, quite a bit has changed here. Assassin ended up getting a very slight nerf at 2 Assassin. 2 Assassin was very valuable because it allowed your spell to crit. So a lot of people were just running 2 Assassin. That ends up being a little weaker, but gets a very slight buff at 3 and a pretty big buff at, 4 and a pretty big buff at 6. We actually just had to bring this down because 6 Assassin was overperforming on PBE. It was cool to see Assassins be viable again, but they were just a little too strong. So this has been brought back down, but still a buff from live. Brawlers ended up with just a little bit less health, but now gain additional AD. And if you played PBE, this fluctuated quite a bit, but we've landed on numbers we're pretty happy with. This allows things like 6 and 8 Brawler to be a bit more of win conditions and not just a wall of defensive stats that still can't do anything. And especially with Shyvana, this allows Brawlers to have kind of a win condition that can be pretty cool. Cultist got some kind of rebalancing here. The TLDR of this is that it's a slight buff at pretty much every level. A pretty big buff at 9. And at 9, they also get extra armor and MR. So 9 got a pretty big buff here. So Cultist definitely doing pretty well on PB, especially 6 Cultist early. So give that a try. Should be fun. Duelist early game kind of gets buffed up a bit. 2 and 4 really strong. We're seeing a lot of success with early Duelists on PBE, so expect to see that. And then 6 gets buffed specifically because Tryndamere is so much harder to get than Xin Zhao. So it's a lot harder to reach 6 Duelist. But if you do, you get even more attack speed. And then Elderwood actually goes down from its live state, specifically because now it's much more synergistic on itself and has better carries, so it needs to pay for that power to some extent. Enlightened just lost Nami, so 6 is much harder to get now, but because of that, it allowed us to redistribute the power a bit. So now 4 Enlightened builds are actually pretty exciting and pretty strong. Talon Morgana can have some pretty good success with this, so give that a try. Fortune got a slight nerf at 0 and 1 loss. This is specifically Win Streak Fortune was just too good. Fortune is meant to be a trait that you lose a bunch and then cash out, not Win Streak with. So we're just pulling down the power of Win Streak Fortune just a little bit. Keeper, there are now 6 Keepers instead of 5, so it's much easier to reach 4 and 6 Keeper. So because of that, their value had to go down just a little bit. 2 Keeper ends up still the same though, so it's still a good flex option. But if you go deep in it, it's not quite as powerful, but you have better carries. So, Mage, same thing. We lost a Mage, so we reworked it now to be a 3-5-7. This allows mages to be a little bit more flexible. You can decide if I want to go 3 Mage, 5 Mage, or 7 Mage. but you don't quite get as bigger rewards. Like Mage 7 is clearly not as powerful as Mage 9. On PBE, we're seeing a lot of people have success with 3 and 5. 7's a little tougher unless you've got some extra mage caps lying around. But give it a try. Mystic 4 and 6 just really weren't pulling their weight in Fates, so we gave them a slight buff at 4 and a big buff at 6. If you're running 6 Mystic, you are going to be immune to magic damage. But let it be known that with Slayers around there, Mystic isn't quite as universal as it was in Fates either. Running 6 Mystic, you're kind of going to get eaten up by Slayers. So give it a try if you definitely get a Chosen. But yeah, so Mystic should be a little bit better. We're seeing a lot of success with 4 Mystic as well. So Sharpshooter. This one's interesting because it works out to be kind of an equal to slight buff. But Sharpshooter lost Jinx and Jhin, which lost a lot of their late game power. They gained Sivir and Tristana, but they also, there's no 4 cost. You have to go like 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, and then into a 5. I probably got those numbers wrong, but basically it's a lot harder to run 6 Sharpshooters. So to make up for that, they get more bounces. The damage goes down a little bit for each bounce, but generally what this means is you can actually run things like Shojin on, say, Nidalee and get even more mana than you were before. So some pretty cool options there. It also means things that don't go down, such as like Teemo's Blind, ends up blinding more people. So that's pretty good. So give that a try. Spirit got reworked. Spirit is now no longer based off the mana of the person. It's just a flat attack speed. So whether Kindred casts or Diana casts, you're still getting 20% attack speed if you have 2. Or that should actually say 40% attack speed for 4. So I didn't update that, but it's 2040. Warlord got a pretty good buff also, and I think it makes Warlord one of the best, easiest to run early game comps. But basically, 50 health, an extra 50 health at 3, an extra 50 health at 6, and an extra 150 health at 9, and then the spell power to match. But the thing to note here is, remember, this is without the stacks. The stacks give you an additional 50%. So Warlords end up feeling quite a bit stronger at 6. This is actually a slight nerf at 6 from PBE because they were overperforming quite a bit. So give Warlord a try. They're looking real strong right now. Vanguard ends up losing a lot of armor. Basically, they were kind of unbeatable, even with like Last Whisper. But they now actually have some built-in magic resist. This allows them to be sort of more universal tanks instead of just, well, they have magic damage, I guess I lose. We're pretty happy with how this change turned out. So now running things like 2 and 4 Vanguard can be very, very tanky and very, very hard to deal with. They feel like tanks. Some Challenger players think that 4 Vanguard is actually insanely strong early. This also increases the value quite a bit of Last Whisper. Things like Divine as well. But Vanguard actually feels like a kind of playable comp now. So, although I haven't seen 8 Vanguard do very well unless you have like 2 Vanguard spats lying around. But give it a try if you feel like it. All right, on to champions. Diana got probably the most changes out of any champion because now she's a Spirit Assassin instead of a Moonlight Assassin. And because she can't scale up to 3-star and 4-star quite as easily, or at all in the case of 4-star, she got some extra HP, some extra attack speed, some extra orb damage, some extra spell shield at 3-star, and some extra orbs at 3-star. Diana 3 is a terror. I would be careful with Diana 3. She is scary. That combined with Assassin, there's some pretty cool Spirit Assassin builds. Be on the lookout for. Fiora got one big change since PBE. The stun duration was already there. She actually became quite a good stun bot and could like stun lock champions with 2 or 4 Enlightened. I saw Saint run a really cool build where he ran RFC Shojin Hurricane and enemy champions just did not move. That was fun. But that build has gotten weaker since PBE because her chosen stat went from mana reduction to HP. Mana reduction on Fiora was proving just a little too powerful and hard to balance, so that has been pulled back to HP. Finally, Nidalee was underperforming a bit, although again, right now with Warlord and the extra Sharpshooter bounces, she's quite a beast. So she goes down to 70 mana. Really recommend an early Shojin 2 Sharpshooter Nidalee. Can be quite scary. So don't underestimate Nidalee. On the 2-cost side, Janna was just a little too free, especially Chosen Janna, so she gets a slight mana nerf. Pyke has been reworked. He's now a Cultist Assassin Slayer. He gained a trait. But we also wanted to have him be more utility. And because he gained Slayer, which is free damage, he had to lose damage as part of his base. So he loses base spell damage. Not quite as strong, but a 6 Slayer 3-star Pyke can still dish out the damage quite a bit. Teemo 1 was a bit too free. Teemo 1 was doing a lot of damage and a lot of CC. So very slight nerf at 1-star Teemo. And then finally Zed. Zed is now a Ninja Slayer, no longer Shade, which means he can't drop aggro. He did get some attack speed to make up for that fact, and he jumps back as part of his base ability now. He doesn't need Shade to do that. But the thing to note here is Zed's still very powerful. We're seeing a lot of builds where you run 4 Ninja 3 Slayer or 4 Ninja 6 Slayer. Don't sleep on him just because he lost his aggro drop. Champ's still very viable. Kalista got a big buff. 0.9 attack speed back to her 1.0. This had been brought down to 0.9 when she got all her bug fixes because we were worried about it. Now that those bug fixes have resolved, we're putting her back to 1.0. This has made her very strong on PBE. So don't sleep on Kalista if you get an early one. She can carry early game, especially with the 2 duelists got a buff. She got a buff. She can be real nasty early. Katarina 3 was overperforming just a bit, and especially with Warlords doing so well, we brought down the damage of Katarina 3 just a little bit. She'll still probably be just as strong of a win condition, just maybe not gain quite as much health. Kindred is now a Spirit Executioner since Hunter is gone, and got a very slight damage nerf at 1 and 2 star. She was kind of carrying games a little too hard by herself, so just a very slight nerf there. Veigar went through quite a bit of changes on PBE, and in the end, what we ended up with was actually just a slight buff to the live state. The 55 mana did its job on live, so we're pretty happy with that. But this should allow him to gain back some of that mana just a little bit quicker and cast a little bit more often. Overall, Veigar is definitely seeming weaker than his 1025 days, but still should be okay if you hit him early, can stack his AP, and get the right items on him. On the 4-cost side, Aatrox gets a pretty big damage buff. This is to allow Vanguard and Cultist to have a bit of a carry. So something cool there. Morgana, we have to talk about Morgana a little bit briefly. Morgana is now an Enlightened Syphoner, so she got a new trait. Her spell used to heal off damage, and then she had Dazzler. Now her spell no longer heals because she needs Syphoner, but her spell has built-in Dazzler, which reduces the enemy AD by 40%. Now, there is a bug with Morgana, unfortunately. The bug here is that her tooltip says that she reduces the magic resist of everyone hit by it by 40%. And that's how it worked in Fates. For all of PBE, and on live, once it goes live, this doesn't work. This is just gone. It doesn't work. The tooltip shouldn't say it. Unfortunately, we can't fix it before it goes live. But we also aren't sure that we should. She's already very powerful. Giving her that extra would probably push her way into the stratosphere of overpowered. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to let it see how it goes with this patch. And we may just remove it from her permanently in 11.3. We'll let you know what we decide, but we want to be clear that it's not working right now, so don't expect her to do that. That does mean you might want something like a Yone or Ionic Spark if you need to get through Magic Resist, but she will not tear through Magic Resist, so be aware of that. Finally, Sejuani got a very slight nerf to her mana, so that the second cast just takes a little longer. Some of those 4 Vanguard or 6 Vanguard Mystic builds, she was just casting a little bit too often, so slowing that down just a little bit. On the Legendary side, we were seeing the Bill Gates comp be a little too good, so we're bringing down some of the power of the 5 cost just a bit. Azir gets a little less knock-up time and slow time. Still a strong champion, not too worried about him. Lee Sin does a little bit less damage with his kicks. He was never about the damage anyway. He was about one-shotting people off the board. Yone is the only one who really kind of got hit by the nerf stick here. His armor and magic resist reduction got dropped again from 60 to 40. The shred now only lasts 8 seconds, not the whole fight, so you can actually outlast it if you need to. And his Unforgotten damage, while it looks like a buff here, is actually a pretty big nerf. Because now it no longer deals bonus missing health, which was basically allowing Yone to one-shot anyone below like 70% health, no matter how much HP they had. Now it's simply extra damage based on missing health, up to double damage. Meaning, if I have a 4,000 health champion at 70%, so that's 2,800, this spell is only going to deal like 1,000, not kill it. So it definitely makes Yone feel weaker than he was before. He can still be strong with the right items, but he's not quite the auto-win champion that you could literally throw in any comp like he was before. So I think that's better for the game. On the item side, almost there. Item side, Chalice of Power was one of our generic items that you could build no matter what comp you were running, and it did well, and it was one of the top performing items in the game. It's been nerfed slightly. It's still good. You'll see this with Chalice of Power, Hand of Justice, and Zeke's that all kind of got the nerf. It took players a while to learn just how good having a 4th and 5th item slot is on champions. Turns out it's really good, and now that it's true, we can finally bring it back down to the values we used to have it at. So, Giant Slayer was proving a little too good at its maximum case, so it got brought down 10%. Hand of Justice, as I mentioned, a little too good to just build all the time no matter what you were running. Slight nerf. Hextech Gunblade was providing a little too much free shielding, which based on our mana system resulted in infinite casts on people like Vygar, so just lowering that a little bit. Hurricane, same thing, and there's a lot of champions that use Hurricane really well in the set now. Olaf, Shyvana, Samira. So because of that, we had to bring Hurricane down to 80%. Zeke's, like I said, same as Chalice, got a bit of a nerf, still really good item. Shiv, this is probably one of the biggest buffs that I don't know if it changes anything, but basically Shiv gets an extra bounce. This is a very good early game item, that's for sure. Whether you build it on like a duelist like Callista or a Tristana, something like that, but this is a very good item. Kind of still falls off in the late game from what we've seen, but consider it now. It got a big buff. And that's it. There's a lot going in. I went kind of fast. Otherwise, be here for another hour video, which we don't want. Again, if you're looking for more details, there's lots of guides out there. You can look at previous video, things like that. Mobilytics, all the various sites that have, all that information. Definitely check that out. But yeah, it's a big patch. It's a whole new set. Your ranks get reset. There's a new battle pass with a bunch of new cosmetics. The Club 2 is freaking hot. That music is great. Some new little legends, new chunks. Yeah, there's just a lot to look forward to. It should be an exciting patch. Hopefully leading to a really good back half of the set. Leading into things like the World Championships. That should be really fun. So yeah, it should be an exciting 3 months for TFT. And again, as always, this is just one patch. We'll have more stuff as it goes. So give us your feedback. Let us know what you think. But hopefully this is one of those really exciting times to play TFT where everyone's still figuring everything out. You can try lots of different things. It's my personal favorite part of TFT. So give it a try. Let us know what you think. The patch goes live Thursday morning on your time, local time. So for some of you in like Oceania, that might be in like 2 hours from this video. For others, about 24 hours. So, all right. On behalf of the whole team that worked their butts off to get this out, we just want to say thank you. Hopefully you guys enjoy. But yeah, should be fun. All right. That's going to do it for now. Have fun. Until next time, take it easy.